All right, guys, here we are in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, continuing the history of West Virginia. And today we are on Main Street. Not only are we going to follow the Mothman prophecies and history behind that, but we're also going to talk about the start of Point Pleasant and how it was created, and also the UFO sightings that have been here. This is a very historic business right here. It's the only Mothman Museum in the United States. And what's very cool is the owner's wife works in that building right there, the Trading Post. I talked to her today. She told me to drive down this road and talk to a guy named Denny, local historian here in town. So we're gonna go see if we can get him to talk about what's going on here, what has been going on here, and get him on camera. So I'm gonna hop in the van, I'm gonna drive down Main Street, and we're gonna see if we can talk to Denny. Let's go. Okay, so here we are in Point Pleasant, West Virginia at Hartley Square, and that's the Mothman statue. Because if you guys don't know, there's a popular story, a popular movie called The Mothman Prophecies that was filmed about the stories that happened here in Point Pleasant. So where I'm at now is I'm on Main Street of this historical town. It's not only historical because of the Mothman Prophecy movie and what happened to the people in this town, actual events, but it's also history from how this town started. But for right now, I'm gonna walk you to the Silver Bridge location. Back in 1967, there was a traffic light that was broken and stuck on red. So the bridge had hundreds of cars in both directions on the bridge, and that caused the I-beams to fail and the bridge collapsed. The story behind that is that for a year before that happened, there was plenty of sightings of this thing called the Mothman, and it went away when that bridge collapsed. But talking to historians here, there is no connection between the bridge collapsing and the Mothman. All right, so as you can see behind me, there is another bridge, but the bridge that crossed the Ohio River from Ohio into West Virginia was right here. And unfortunately, like I said earlier in this video, is that this bridge collapsed because there was cars that were parked on it, and the weight caused the I-beams to break, and hundreds of cars, I think it was 68 people passed away in the water. I'll have to re-look up that number, but I think it was 68. So also what I have going on right now is there is a very nice lady named Ashley who is gonna allow me to ask her some questions and be on video to explain, because she grew up in this town and she knows all the history and has some of her own stories, I do believe. So I'm gonna turn this camera back on when Ashley and I are hanging out somewhere probably down here. So we'll be with you in a second. All right, guys, I caught up with Ashley and we are down here on the waterways. And this is Ashley right behind me, but what you can see is that bridge there. The Silver Bridge that fell down was actually right before this bridge. So Ashley is a hairdresser here in town, and you lived here your whole life?
Yes.
Okay, so we're gonna ask her some questions, or she's just gonna tell us some stories about the Mothman. And I haven't heard any of them yet, so I don't know what she's gonna say. So let me introduce you to Ashley. Hi, Ashley, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
I really appreciate you doing this. Believe me, I can't put it into words when I'm able to meet people on the road that want to share stories of local small towns like this one. So you're really doing me a huge service, and I appreciate it so much. Thank you. So I just happened upon Ashley here when she was getting out of her car to go into work, and I had said, can you tell me some stuff? And she says, let's go do an interview. So that's what we're doing here right now. And I just wanted to ask you, have you had any close encounters or stories that may have affected you, or any people that you know that are stories from the Mothman?
I think the biggest story that everybody's affected by is the Silver Bridge falling, and the thought that the Mothman and the Men in Black had something to do with it.
Now, real quick, the Men in Black is, the reason why she said that is there were UFOs that were sighted here in town during that whole year of the Mothman visitations that many people have seen. And with those UFO sightings, the Men in Black are investigators, probably from the government, that are investigating UFO activity. So that's probably what she's talking about.
So that happened, but amongst that, I don't know if the Mothman happened before I think the Mothman was spotted before the Silver Bridge fell.
Yes, that's what I've been.
I'm pretty sure that there was like a group of friends out, and they were riding around out TNT and they saw something that was chasing after them. A lot of people like to think that they were probably just tripping. More than likely just tripping, but there's been other people say that they've seen things. I actually did a project on the Mothman when I was in elementary school. Not that I can really remember much of it, but there was just different stories of, you know, dogs barking in the backyard and just red eyes being seen. There was one time when I was with some friends. We were playing hide and seek, spotlight tag, and I fell and I looked up and I thought that I saw those red eyes, but it was more than likely just the plant that, you know, is in this town. But there's some real believers. I'd like to believe it.
Yeah.
And I hope that, you know, he comes around one day. Recently there's been a thing, and it's a TikTok viral thing where I guess the people that come in to visit, the tourists that come in to visit the Mothman statue and whatnot, they started bringing beans to the Mothman. I'm not really for sure why. Maybe a good luck thing.
To the statue?
Yes, there are tourists that come in just leaving beans at the statue. And I don't know the answer. I'd love to know the answer to why they do this. I think it's just like some TikTok viral thing. Well, I think a little bit after people started doing this, the Mothman, somebody put a blessing box right by the Mothman. I don't think that they had permission to put the blessing box there, so the mayor, along with a few other people, removed the blessing box because I think people were like storing the beans in there and whatnot. So once that blessing box was taken, an uproar of tourists. They thought that this was against the Mothman. So all these TikTokers are out to get the mayor. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. I don't think he had any intention of going against the Mothman, because the Mothman brings so much to Point Pleasant and stuff. I'm pretty sure that they'd be friends if they met.
So do you know anybody that's been directly affected, or do you know any descendants of the family members that did see the Mothman or anything like that?
I don't know any of the family members and stuff, and now that you say that, I'm probably going to go Google all that and kind of like background check it. Since I live here, I have nothing better to do than to find these people.
Do you ever find yourself like seeking out the Mothman at all in town, going into the TNT area, or have you ever done that as a kid?
We went into the TNT area. They have a few igloos and stuff. There used to be a building there, 2 towers, I think. It was many, many years ago, but they blew up those 2 towers, and there was video of these 2 towers getting blown up. And it literally looked like the Mothman. I forgot all about this.
No kidding.
But yeah, it literally looked like when the building was going down, it looked like the silhouette of the Mothman. And I mean, there was teachers bringing it to our elementary school, showing it to us, like, oh my gosh, you gotta see, like, everybody believes it. It's insane. So, you know, there's some people that don't believe it, there's some people that do, but then there's people that don't believe it, they see that, and it's just like, wow.
Coincidence.
Yeah, it's strange. It's very strange.
Well, awesome. I appreciate your time, and I thank you for taking the minutes out here to be able to have a homegrown story from somebody who grew up here. Is there anything else you can think of before we close out, or?
The Mothman Festival. It's really awesome, and everybody should come to that. Unfortunately, it was postponed the past 2 years due to COVID, but hopefully next year.
What month is that in?
It's usually in September.
Okay.
Yeah. So we missed it September 19th this year, and we had to cancel it. Even though we canceled it, there were still many tourists that came because, you know, they've been looking so forward to coming and checking it all out. So there are still people that came.
I'll be back. I'll come for that.
You should. It's a lot of fun. A lot of different people. Really cool.
All right, guys. I appreciate it. Everybody in chat and comments, if you can welcome Ashley to the Nomak Nation family and give her some warm comments inside of this video, I'd greatly appreciate it. We are standing in an area where there's a whole bunch of murals, and there's some history down here of George Washington owning property and leasing out this mansion, which really isn't a mansion, but back then it would have been. So the next clip I'm going to do is I'm going to ask her if this is true. The McDonald's take a left, and that's the street that the bridge was actually on?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm going to go down to that street. I'm going to take a left onto that street where the bridge originally was, because it's no longer here anymore. And I think that it took them about a year, and they removed all the material out of the water to be able to investigate what the reason why it fell. And it fell because of failing I-beams. So the next clip you guys see, I'm going to be driving down this road taking a left at McDonald's and showing you where that bridge was. So this is the road that comes in where the bridge was, and they actually painted a mural here that was the bridge going across of it. All right, so there's no reason for me to drive down and take a left at McDonald's because we just showed it to you right here. And tomorrow, stick around for the rest of this video, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into the TNT area at night and film to see if we can catch something weird on video. But also tomorrow, I've got an interview with Denny, who is a historian here in town, and hopefully he can give us some insight and some more history on what happens here in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next clip. All right, guys, here we are in the only Mothman Museum on the planet. And it's here on the main street. It's actually called Main Street here in Point Pleasant. I highly suggest that you guys come down here and see this museum for yourselves. It's got very cool backstories, all kinds of documentation. You can see the men in black behind me, and you can see tourists behind me enjoying it right now, smiling through their masks and giving me the peace sign. But very cool place to come see. Definitely take this tour. There is so much to see in this museum. I'm just walking through it quickly because I don't want to give it all away. I took the tour. I think you guys should too when you come back down. We're entering the main lobby right now. The cool thing about this is it's a family-owned business. The guy that owns this business is named Jeff. His mom is actually running the counter behind us. And where I bought some shirts that you're going to see later on in these videos is from the trading company here on Main Street, and his wife runs that. So this town has not lost any of its hometown feel over the last 50 years. From what I have been talking to local people in this area, they say it's the same now as it basically was back in the 60s, minus the cars. There's more cars and they're newer, and that's pretty much it. There's still only about 5,000 people that live in Point Pleasant, West Virginia. All right, so what's going on next is I got in contact with this guy named David. And David and I are going to go to the TNT area, and that's where a lot of this story takes place in the beginning. And that TNT area is about 7 to 8 miles that way. And he's going to take me into the back and show me all the areas back there. I highly suggest you guys stick around for that part of the video coming up next. We'll see you soon. Okay, guys, I am here with Dave, and he brought me down this road because this is the very first sighting was right here. So I'm going to flip this camera around. What was on the other side of this fence was a big power station. A powerhouse, and that's the first known sighting of the Mothman. Was right here. I'm gonna flip this camera around, and if you could think 100 yards down past this fence that you're gonna see through, that's the first sighting of the Mothman. Take a look. So it was right there was the first sighting. Back in the 60s?
Yes,
Yeah.
And they'd bonfire and have stuff where everybody would meet.
So I'm not sure if you guys caught that on audio, but what Dave just told me is that back in the 60s, a bunch of kids would always come up this road, and then they would drive to that power plant, and they would all park underneath it, have bonfires and have parties. And was it 2 kids that first saw the first Moth?
There was 4 in
Four?
the car.
4 in a car are the first ones that saw the Mothman. Didn't they also report that it followed them down country roads?
Right. So
Yeah.
It followed them out of here.
So it followed them out of here and chased them. They said they were doing upwards to 90 miles an hour, and it was not losing. The Mothman was not losing any ground on him, staring at him through the passenger window in the back seat, is the report that I heard. But unfortunately, if you guys can see right here, other side of this fence, there is a gate. Now he tells me that we used to be able to drive down there. We're going to see if we can get in by going all the way around. But Dave, you said you have another location besides this one.
Yeah, I'm hoping we can get in. If we can't get in this gate, maybe we can come in from the other end and come back around.
Okay, and then we're going to the second place he was seen?
Right.
Okay, so
this
stick.
is where they take them on their haywire run. They all come in.
Oh, so it's like a
They'll
big
take them.
tour on the hay rides.
Yep.
Okay, cool. So stick around for the next clip because we're going to take a trip down that road. Let's go. All right, so we went that way, and we cannot get through to go around, but here's that gate that's blocked, and right there was the first sighting, just to give you guys a little bit of a better view. Now we're going to drive down that road, And we're gonna go to the second location of the sighting. Let's go. Okay, so that first location was down this road and it was back that way. What Dave just told me is that first sighting, what happened is the kids in the vehicles were so scared they come peeling out onto this road. This was a gravel road way back then. And they went barreling down this road here to escape the Mothman. So this was the road, and it was gravel back then, where the Mothman was chasing them when they were doing 90 miles an hour. And this is the second location here, Dave?
Yeah, I can't see the old powerhouse. There should be blocks. Maybe I got to go up a little bit further.
Because it's so overgrown, we can't see through right now anyway, because I do see...
Do you see pillars back through there?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. That's where they were coming up through here. Supposedly it went over there.
Okay, so the second sighting of the Mothman was right here where I'm standing. I'm gonna flip this camera around after this car drives by and show you the second sighting. You're not gonna see too much because it's really overgrown here. This is the end of summer right now, but right through these trees. How far back do you say?
That right there, that's only probably 35, 40 yards.
So 40 yards past where I'm standing right now is the second location where this Mothman was supposedly seen. Take a look. So right there into the woods, and you can barely see, but there's some pillars right back there, and this is exactly where it was seen for the second time. So if you can just put it into your head, just to pretend like you were them back in 1966, where you saw two red eyes staring down on you, and it was a man in the shape of a moth, and it scared them so badly they did 90 miles an hour down this road to get away from a monster. Okay, so what we're gonna do, guys, is we're gonna hop in the car and go just a little bit down the road. There may be a way we can get in and get behind here to take a look. We're not sure yet, but I'll turn the camera back on when we find out. Okay, we didn't get 10 yards down the road and we saw a bridge that covers it. I got my car on the road. Dave's gonna stay back and watch, make sure I got the hazards on. But I'm gonna walk back to the pillar where the second sighting was seen. Let's go for a walk. So you can see that people have built steps and a bridge here just to get across to be able to see this area. And we are in that area right here is where the second sighting was. It was on top of that pillar, and these pillars used to run all the way across. But how cool is that? This is the exact location for sighting number 2. All right, so I'm standing here in the thicket. There are spider webs everywhere. I can't get past most of these spots because there's spider webs everywhere. But right here is the pillar of this, looks like a bridge or something. The mosquitoes are biting me like crazy. But this is the second location right here. We're gonna walk on out of here and see where Dave is taking us next. Let's go. Okay, where we're walking right now is the TNT area. And to give you a little bit of history on what this area is back in before World War II, this place used to be a huge housing area to manufacture ammunition. And even after, during the war, I think it shut down shortly after the war, this area had a lot of toxic waste, and it had a lot of garbage here left over, including TNT. And it's believed to be known that that might be the reason why these Mothmans were coming out, is because of all the toxicity that was in these waters. But we'll never know, even if these stories are true. Dave's pointing something out here right now. What is this?
This is one of the igloos you can see, and it's wide open. You can't even tell it, see, from the sky.
Yeah, you can't even tell. So this is where they found a body, right?
Yeah, and the car.
So what happened was there was a kid, what was his name?
Laudermelt was his last name.
Laudermelt was his last name, and he was shot to death just a mile that way. And the people who shot him, or the person who shot him, was never found. But they found his body. I'm going to turn the camera around and show you. And they found his car in here too?
The car.
Well, they found his body down there.
Yeah.
And they found his car in this igloo. Take a look.
You can see how many people come out here. People stay in here now. This is what it was back in the war days.
So this is a gigantic igloo, and you can hear the echo. And this is where that car was found. He's freaking out back here. Why was that? Oh, he was trying to scare me. But I don't have a light on me, or even my phone to have a light. But All right, so Dave just gave me a light, and we're gonna see if this shines any light. You really can't even see with the phone light, but you can hear the echo in here because it's a gigantic igloo, a cement igloo. And there's the door. All right, Dave, here's your phone back. Man, this echo is crazy. Let me go in the middle and yell, "No Moth Nation!" Oh, that's very cool. I'm going to increase the audio on that when we do the editing to hear it. But this is where they found the murdered victim's car, was in that gigantic igloo. Was this door here? How did they get this car in there?
Yeah, see, it was always open.
Wow.
They only lock the ones now where.
Well, they
ammo's
turn the car
still
sideways to get it in there?
No, they got it in. I don't know how.
Wow, huge history to this area. Not only is there sightings of man-like moths with red eyes, not only is there UFO sightings, not only were these waters covered in toxic waste to maybe create some mythic monstered animal, but there was also a murder that happened a mile that way, and his vehicle was found in there. Okay, here's a little history of this area, and I think we're going to lock the video up here. I'm not sure. Gonna see what we can find next. Stick around for the next clip. So here we are with Denny, a local historian in the area, and I've been talking to him for a good probably half an hour to 45 minutes before he even started. So my job's gonna be easy. I'm just gonna let this guy talk about the history of we're gonna stick to pretty much the Mothman side of it, because that's where we're at in the film production of what I'm doing. But I just wanted to kind of let you run with it. Tell us what's going on with this Mothman for the people who have no idea, have never seen the movies. And how Point Pleasant is connected with it. You grew up in this town. You were 8, 9 years old when the stories were coming out in 1966, I believe.
Yeah, 65,
65,
the whole
66.
year before the bridge fell.
And one thing that we're going to touch on at the beginning of this is that we're not going to talk about the bridge being tied into the Mothman, because it does this town a disjust or an in-service to tie those two, because they're not connected. So we're not gonna go down that line. So yeah, just run with it. Kind of give us the history of the Mothman, what was happening, what were people seeing, and how did it affect this town, or did it not affect this town? And any personal stories you have too of people that you know that have seen it and you've heard their testaments or whatever.
The whole Mothman story starts with a young couple in high school, Roger Scarberry and Linda McDaniel, who both lived on 30th Street, where I live, and Jeff Walmsley, who's famous for Mothman Festival and books about the Mothman. We all lived on 30th Street behind a restaurant called Tiny's Drive-In. And the Clinic Wildlife Management Area, which is known locally as the TNT, is just about 5 miles north of us, out of town. And the TNT McClinic has about a nice 1 mile straight strip, which in West Virginia is rare. And of course, we're going to use it as a drag strip.
I've been on it. I've seen it.
Yes, and if you've ever been there at night, you'll realize it makes a wonderful drag strip out there. And Roger was just practicing with his car. He had a hot rod. Roger, I always described him as kind of a Fonzie type character with the leather jacket and the t-shirt. He was cool.
Yeah.
To a 9-year-old, he was really cool. And they were out there in his car, and apparently a large bird, that's what it was described of then, a 6-foot bird with huge wings, was flying right over top of his car as he was racing it down through there. And it kind of scared him. It was apparently right over top of their car, so they came on into town, and it apparently followed them all the way into the town, and they reported it to the local authorities, and they got in the newspaper, and once the whole town is out looking for this large 6-foot bird in the McClinic Wildlife Management Area is a bird sanctuary anyway. I mean, it's designed for waterfowl. There's huge herons. There's cranes out there. Everyone just thought it was a big sandhill crane that lost his mind or something. So we were all out there looking for it, and that's what it was, the big bird. So that's how it all started. And for a town of hunters, let's go out and get one.
Mm-hmm.
So was there fear? No, not really. There wasn't any supernatural. It was just a big bird that was out chasing cars. And apparently, from Jeff Walmsley's books, we know that some people found it that night. There's interviews with people that were kids sitting in the back seats of the parents' car when this large bird apparently landed on the hood of their car. And over the course of the next year, a lot of local people saw this large bird. Reputable people, airplane pilot. We have a small airport out near McClellan. A couple of the airplane pilots reported a large winged bird flying over. As a marketing person, the demographics were everywhere. All age groups, hunters, people on motorcycles, kids out partying out there at night, bonfires. All at once, there's a lot of different eyewitnesses coming from. And there's no physical encounters. It's not attacking anyone, but it is sure scaring the hell out of a lot of people. And it's starting to make the newspaper. And it was kind of a local joke. A lot of local people said the kids were smoking that marijuana out there and seeing things. Of course, we know that's not true now.
Right.
It's ridiculous. But back in 1965, we didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And it really, you got a bad connotation if you told local people you saw it. So everybody sort of just clammed up about it all. And then when the bridge falls in December that year that all this is going on, of course, like now, the bridge took over all the newspapers, all the news. Local people were losing parents, children. It's on the national news. We're cut off from a main place that we shop and work in Ohio, just across the river. The river to us is just a road.
Mm-hmm.
When you grow up on the Ohio River, you work on the Ohio River, it's just a road. So Ohio to us, we just cross the bridge and shop and eat and do whatever we need over there. You're cut off completely. And that's the reality of the entire situation. So the big bird got put away.
Mm-hmm.
Especially they didn't want to hear anything about this mystical bird having to do anything with the real bridge falling and the people that died with it. You would really get a look if you started talking about the Mothman. And even I knew that as a 9-year-old. So, but then John Keel comes to Point Pleasant to interview everybody, and he's this young man from New York, this young hippie from New York who's comes to West Virginia. He says he came for a weekend, he spent a year. He did. He virtually moved in with my neighbors and stayed here and researched, but no one thought a thing about it. He was just some silly hippie wanting to know something about that bird.
Yeah.
And really went unnoticed by everyone here, except for a 9-year-old kid that was fascinated by it and just had to climb the chain link fence to talk to him was all. So, and to tell you the truth, I'd forgot he was there completely. Jeff Walmsley was the one who had to remind me that was John Keel, that was the hippie I knew back then. I didn't put two and two together till I didn't know the old man, the gray-haired old man in the suit that everyone sees a picture of. I said, I've never met that guy in my life. But
And John Keel is the author of the book
Mothman
The Mothman Prophecies,
yes,
which
and he was in his 20s,
When he wrote it.
mid-20s, yeah, when he came to Point Pleasant.
Yeah.
So it wasn't until I saw his picture in a book that I said, yes, I know him. I don't know who this guy is, but I spent a summer with that guy right there. So, but yeah, that's my connection with all of it. Is just growing up where it all happened, and everybody says, "How do you know?" It was my life. I have to go back and think about it.
Yeah.
But particularly since I was 9, I'm 63 now, and I've been here since I've been in my mid-50s. So, but it was not popular. It wasn't even popular 15 years ago, quite frankly. We did not set out to turn our town into the home of the Mothman.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of American history here. And quite frankly, we spent millions of dollars on our history. Not our money, but grants.
Mm-hmm.
There's $1 million worth of historical murals in our riverfront park.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, there is a $5 million riverfront park just dedicated to our history and to host riverboats. We do have the Mothman statue on Main Street, but the Mothman is the private enterprise of the Walmsley family. We do not write grants to promote the Mothman or anything like that. We write grants to promote our American history. The George Washington and the Battle of Point Pleasant and Cornstalk and Lewis and Boone and all the people that were here. But with anything else, we have to let the tourists decide what they like.
Yeah.
And you know what? Everybody's got a fort, just about. Everybody's got a battle somewhere. Everybody's part of American history, but there's only one Mothman. There's only one Point Pleasant.
Yeah.
And if you want to come and see where the Mothman was at, and if you want to talk to people who are still alive, while all this was going on, they're all over 60, but they're still here. No one ever leaves. Point Pleasant looks, Main Street Point Pleasant looks the same now as it did then, as it did in 1903. It hasn't changed a bit.
And this town still has a population of 5,000 to 6,000 people.
No, not even 5.
Not even 5.
No, not in the city limits. The county's about 25,000, and the average age is about that. So yeah, you can come here and still talk to a lot of people that knew all about it and are eyewitnesses, which you can't do at Gettysburg or anywhere else like that.
True.
And Jeff Walmsley, of course, who's been on all the shows, will be more than happy to sit down and talk to you about it, and the locals will too.
Yeah.
Now, the Mothman Festival, we don't have time to talk.
15,000 people in town during the Mothman Festival.
Think about it. It is as if every single resident of Point Pleasant invited their family to come home one day.
And stand on the same street.
And stand on the same street.
Yeah.
And you know what? It has grown every year for 15 years. They call it the largest paranormal convention in the East.
Wow.
And everybody who's into paranormal is here because everybody else is.
Yeah.
This is the one place you can come and say, I saw that Mothman, and people will crowd around you to want to hear about it. And the local people here, the ones that are here, the smart ones get out of town because you can't get anywhere here.
Yeah.
And we don't like lines, and there's lines everywhere. Believe me, we do not like standing in line here for anything. But the people who stay are here to make money.
Yeah.
And they are more than happy to talk to you about the Mothman that day, listen to your stories, whatever you want to do.
Now, what's interesting to me is, for you viewers out there, is Denny has never seen the Mothman Prophecies movie, which it's kind of cool, but a little bit confusing for me as a filmmaker to know that this town has this huge history, not only with the Mothman, but with Hollywood. And for a person who grew up here in town to not have seen the movie is quite interesting.
Well, I have to say I've not seen any of the 40 plus TV shows I've made either.
So he's made 40 plus TV shows, hasn't seen one of them. But so I know a lot of the questions will be, what are the similarities from the movie to what actually happened? And
well, I know what I made.
I've been, like I said, I've been talking to Denny for about an hour before we started filming. And one of the things that is not familiar or that is not real from the movie we can take away is this Mothman leaving any marks of places that he's been, like burns in trees or in concrete and things like that. So we can forget about that side of the movie. But what is very fascinating to me of what is true from the movie, I'll let you go into what was in the water after the bridge fell. So that the movie has this part in it, and it's also true, which is the presents and the cars, but the Christmas presents that were floating in the water. Your mom, you said, had
Exactly. Yeah.
So I guess going to hear from your mom being on Main Street when the bridge actually collapsed.
My mother worked at Murphy's, was the big general store on Main Street, and my mother had always worked on Main Street somewhere. She was always in retail, and she said that they all heard an explosion. Now, we're surrounded by power plants here. There's 5 big American Electric power plants. And they thought one of them had exploded. There's also chemical plants here as well, all because of the Ohio River.
Mm-hmm.
And when they went out, the bridge was gone. You could always see, there's a flood wall surrounding Point Pleasant.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never seen a flood wall, it's interesting. And the bridge was gone. So she ran out through one of the openings in the flood wall. There's doors in the flood wall, places to get out. And the Silver Bridge was gone. Now there's a railroad bridge right beside it, but just the pilings of the bridge, she said, and there were cars and Christmas gifts floating in the river. And that is true. That is true.
That had to have been just a very surreal and almost unbelievable sight for any person, but especially a young mother. And remember, this is the 60s. This isn't in the 2000s or even in 2020, where times were different back then, where there wasn't the ability to get on the cell phone to call to find your husband or things like that.
My father, I was 9. We said 9 years old. My father and I were supposed to go to the grocery store across the bridge. It's a place called Tiny's that we shopped at. It was a grocery store right on the other side of the Silver Bridge that all of us shopped at. He had businesses on both sides of the river. My mother's first thought was that my father and I were on that bridge.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Now, my mother was the type that would cut a switch. If you know what I mean. If you don't, then...
Well, it's for us city, or not for us, but for those city folks, because I grew up in the country, cutting a switch is when you've done something wrong as a child.
Yes.
My parents would probably make me go cut the switch.
Your good friends would even hand her a bigger one if they thought she was going to beat you all the way down the street. So I had disobeyed my father because I didn't want to go, and had climbed up in the top of a tree at the end of 30th Street. I was like a squirrel back then.
Yeah.
And wouldn't come down. And I was sitting on that top of the tree when I saw my mother come walking down the street. Like I said, my mother thought my dad and I were on the bridge. She came home immediately. And the thing I remember about that day, and I've said it before, my mother was crying when she came down that street.
And you were expecting her to...
I thought she was so mad. She's in tears. She is going to beat my ass all the way down that street because you did not disobey your parents then.
Yeah.
There were consequences. You don't say no. You said no and you ducked. So I came down out of the tree immediately because, like I said, I had to go home eventually, and my mother just hugged me.
Yeah.
And I knew something was wrong.
I always love to hear good memories of a bad situation. So, in retrospect of what you just said, could your disobedience quintessentially have saved you and your dad's life?
It did. And it saved me from a serious ass whipping. Which I was more concerned with about at the time.
Yeah,
as a 9-year-old, I was going to survive the day. It wasn't that bridge. It was
not getting beat.
We had a long way to go back home down that street. I've been beaten all the way back there. Only once, but anyway. But all the mothers did it back then. We used to kill every willow tree we could find.
Because the short, stringy ones hurt the most.
Oh, they'd snap them like a bullwhip,
Yeah, I'd really
and
get-
everyone else would just laugh and howl as you were getting beat down the
Yeah, of
street.
course.
That's how they were back then. So, but yeah, that was my memory.
Yeah.
And other than the fact that people from Point Pleasant don't like sitting on bridges, I actually got stuck on a bridge in New York one time in the back of a limo when I was working there, and told the driver to let me out. I'd meet him at the end of the bridge.
Yeah.
And I heard the driver say, "What in the hell's his problem?" The guy said, "He's from Point Pleasant." And the guy went, oh, okay.
Now it's understandable.
Yeah, I'm not sitting on this damn bridge.
Yeah.
Nope. No, it's not when it's shaking, I'm not.
What's ironic about
It's going to catch me on the run. So,
What's ironic about this story is I was just talking to my brother-in-law a couple months ago, and he is in he's a Coast Guard investigator, and he is deathly afraid of bridges, like shaking, deathly afraid of bridges.
Yeah.
You know where he lived for almost 20 years? Key West. Anytime you go to the mainland, you have to cross 7 miles.
Well, we cross
of
2
bridge.
every day here.
Yeah.
2 bridges every day, and like I said, we don't think about it at all unless that thing starts moving.
Yeah.
And we don't like sitting on them. We want to go over, but you have to. We live on 2 rivers.
You got to access
You
the bridge.
have,
on a
and we
daily
have
basis.
real bridges, not little tiny. I mean, big ass bridges that you're. And do we take it for granted the bridges don't fall? Not here, we don't. No. And I think when that one fell in Minnesota, the first thing everybody's talking about, Point Pleasant again. So yeah.
That's a good time for me to say this. I came here as a filmmaker, as an investigative journalist, just as a curious person because of the month of October, following the paranormal. Of course, when you're in West Virginia, the number one thing you got to see is Point Pleasant because of the Mothman. But what I had found spending 2 days here in Point Pleasant and talking to many different locals is that the Mothman to locals is a very small part of of Point Pleasant. It brings in the money, which keeps this town going, but the tight niche relationship people have with everybody else in this town is probably what I found the most important. But 2, it's the history going back from the 1700s when this town was created, the conflicts that were going on, and of course the healing process over the tragedy 40 or 60 plus, or is it about 50 some years ago? That bridge went down. So the
Almost 60 years.
yeah, almost 60 years. So to me, I love hidden surprises. I came here for the Mothman, but I learned so much more about just hanging out of this town by just hanging out and talking to the locals of it. And I've probably crossed any 30 or 40 people that are here strictly for the Mothman on Main Street.
Sure.
And you could tell by the way they look, or they're wearing Mothman shirts and things
Oh,
like
yeah.
that they're not a local. So I would talk
Right.
to them for a little while because they want to know why I was filming, and I'm telling them I'm here to do this. But I found so much more interesting conversations, not like those weren't interesting, just by going up and talking to a local person about the history of this town. And they're like, oh, go talk. They know this person by the name. They hang out with them on holidays. Like, oh, go talk to this person. I was at a hairstyling salon because I saw a lady get out of a Jeep. I ended up talking to her for 20 minutes. She introduced me to Dwayne, but everybody calls him, or his name's Dave, but everybody calls him Dwayne.
Yeah.
He actually took me out to the TNT area and showed me everything.
We'll give you a tour.
So if you guys are looking for something to do, to just hang out for 1960s, 1950s small town America, if you guys want that feel, you're not going to see it in the cars driving around, but come to Point Pleasant, West Virginia. If you want that hometown feel, that small town feel, the only thing different is people are taller than they were back in the 60s, and the cars are much newer, and that's it.
That's you're right. But you got to come when we're not having the Mothman Festival.
Exactly. Different town then.
It is a convention atmosphere here that is just elbow to elbow with true believers, and it's great to hang out with them, and we love entertaining them, but we don't have time to talk.
Yeah.
And you have to park you're gonna have to park several hundred yards away from Main Street.
Mm-hmm.
But if you just come any other weekend, you can park right in front of the Mothman Museum, right on our Main Street. Most of us are sitting out there on a bench somewhere. Yeah. You can visit with us. We'll talk to you as long as you want. You want us to take you out to TNT? We'll show you everything.
I can speak from experience for that.
We'll hang out with you, but if you come that Saturday, the Mothman, expect a hi. How are you? It's good to see you again, and that's it.
Yeah. Come back to me in 2 weeks. We'll have a conversation.
But there's a lot to do here and see.
Yeah.
You need to go to the West Virginia State Farm Museum because that's where the Mothman Trail and all of the
hayride. They have a hayride.
Yes, that's where the hayride is at. You need to go to Fort Randolph and talk to their reenactors who can tell you all about Chief Cornstalk's curse and all that. I actually give you the true story about it. That did not exist, and it is. Anyway, so there's so many other things to see here that you can mix it in with your day, and you're going to want to shop because you're going to want to pick up some souvenirs while you're here, and so come and see us. Come and see us at the festival, but come another day too when we have time to actually visit with you a little bit. So and spend time.
Man, Denny, I really appreciate you taking this, probably 2 hours out of your a good hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes out of your morning to talk with me. I couldn't.
There you go. Anybody could have walked in. I'd spent the same amount of time with them. That's what I was just
way to
saying.
make me feel special. If this part of the video is over with, I'm not going to plug the town at all. So I guess in closing, what I wanted to say, not only thank you to you and to the friendly people here in Point Pleasant that I've met, if you guys are watching this video, but to the viewers, come here for the Mothman, look in his shadows, and you'll discover so much more that is much more than you thought you would ever find in Point Pleasant. And I hope this video brings some of you guys to town. So with that being said, Denny, I really appreciate the interview. Thank you so much.
Pleasure.
And guys, stay tuned for the next clip. All right, so that does it for my time here in Point Pleasant. This is Main Street where I'm closing this video out. I highly suggest that you guys come down and visit these shops that are on the main street here in Point Pleasant. Now, what did I find here in Point Pleasant? Did I find the Mothman? No, but I wasn't looking for him. What I did find was so much more. I got to know so many of the locals here in town, had lunch with them, and they took me into the back country here and showed me some of the history of the town when it came to the TNT area. But most importantly, I gained some friends. There is so much more to this town than the Mothman stories of the past. So I highly suggest that you guys come down, you hang out with this guy, the Mothman, and just experience the history of the town, but more importantly, experience the people in this town because they're all very, very nice. I thank you guys from Point Pleasant who are watching for your hospitality. And if you haven't hit that subscribe button, please do. And we're out of here for now, but make sure you guys stick around for more epic adventures that Nomaka is going to take you on with the dogs traveling this country. And we'll talk to you later and see you on the next one.